Okay, so I'm going to keep this very short because I know it's Friday morning. I'm sure a lot of you have things going on, but I'm going to talk about something very quickly because it's very irritating with me or to me when people try to play with me. Okay, because I see what a lot of these bitches are doing. They're trying to act like divestment is this radical concept that came from out of nowhere. The reality is that at least as far back as the 1800s, you had Black women who directly experienced the evils of slavery, right? So they had been slaves or they had witnessed it in some other shape or form. And then you have the Civil War and you have Reconstruction and you have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And with the 15th Amendment, you have a national conversation about voting rights for Black men. And you had women across the board, Black women, white women, whoever, saying, well, wait a minute, women need to be included in these conversations. And you had small pockets of Black women who were saying, well, wait a minute, you don't want to give Black men voting rights without including Black women. Two of those women were Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. Okay? No, I'm not saying that they would call themselves divestors, but what I am saying is that these are Black women who were in the trenches and they saw directly the double-edged sword of gender discrimination and racial discrimination. And in the case of Sojourner Truth, she said, well, okay, if Black women don't have legal protections, then our new oppressors will be Black men. That was her saying that well over 150 years ago, and look at where the fuck we are today. You had Harriet Tubman, who risked her life to lead other Black women and Black men and Black children to freedom, who was a spy for the Union, who did something that was very unpopular at the time. She opposed the 15th Amendment because it did not include voting rights for women, because she said, well, hey, Black women need voting rights. Do you know how unpopular that was? Do you understand that that is why these niggas had such a problem with her being recognized on the $20 bill? Because she was one of the first Black women with a national presence who said, well, wait a minute, we need our legislative protections to be separate from those of Black men. Because if I'm not mistaken, her own husband left her. Her own husband left her and their kids. She saw firsthand how these niggas would do you in. And she said, well, no, we need our own rights as Black women. And I need you all to understand something. The easiest way for people to present divestment as this fringe idea is to separate us from the history of Black women. Black women in this country fighting for our rights. You had Black women like Mary Church Terrell, which a lot of you pressed ass bitches would have a problem with because apparently she's too light for y'all. But she also promoted voting rights and other legislative protections for Black women. Do you not understand that those conversations were the birthplace of divestment? The first times where you saw Black women saying, well, wait, we need our own legislative protections because unlike other groups of women, we cannot rely on the men who share our skin color to protect us. And over time, those small pockets of Black women realized, well, wait a minute, we need to completely separate ourselves from Black men. We need to completely divest from the concept of advocating for anything that does not benefit us individually as a Black woman, and then for those of you who care about it, the collective of Black women. But do you understand that those conversations started when those bitches like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, okay, were blackballing Black women at Seneca Falls, and you had Black women creating their own social clubs? Black women who said, well, no, the voting rights conversation needs to include women because Black women need our own legal protections. Do you not understand that that is where these conversations originated? And over time, when you fast forward a little bit and you get through the civil rights movement of the 1950s and the 60s, and then you go to the Black Panthers, and these Black women were being raped by niggas, and they got to the point where they realized that they could only experience happiness by completely cutting themselves off from Black men. And then you go to 2011, 2012, and you have Black women empowerment conversations on social media. Do you not understand the original concept of BWE was to lead Black women to divestment? And then we get to today, where those of us who understand the history recognize that the only path to freedom for Black women is to cut ourselves off from these niggas completely, because we know the history. We understand that these conversations were birthed by Black women who saw, right? Black women who were minding their business in their tribes or villages in Africa, and who saw the very men who share their same skin color selling them to distant shores. Then they get here, and then they get to other places in the Black diaspora, and they see that these niggas were literally mailing themselves to freedom, leaving their wives and kids. And then after the Civil War, you see the records with the Freedmen's Bureau of countless numbers of Black women saying, hey, their husbands were saying that they were going to the West and the North to get jobs and to get land, and they would come back for them, and then those niggas never returned. You see Black women like Harriet Tubman, who were on the front lines of the anti-slavery movement, saying, well, wait a minute, when it comes to voting rights, we cannot rely on these niggas, because I literally had to threaten to kill these niggas to keep them from ruining our path to freedom. So Black women need our own voting rights. A lot of you bitches know nothing about history. And a lot of y'all are starting to look funny to me, because anytime a divested Black woman tries to point out the fact that these conversations link back to these Black women who were brave enough to originate the discussions about Black women having our own legal protections, to where we are today, you have to understand ideas evolve over time. Divestment does not come from bitches throwing their pinkies in the air and selling you $500 classes. Divestment evolves from the women who were brave enough nearly 200 years ago to say, well, wait a minute, we need our own legal protections. And if you can't see that, if you can't see that, then you're brain dead and mildly retarded. Okay? Happy Friday. Hope y'all have a good day.